Hey, good morning. So, what are we going to talk about today?
Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution. Are there any questions over the readings? Any concerns with the questions? All right. If you are ready to go, we will go ahead and start. So we'll talk through that, and you'll be like, huh. All right, so let's go ahead and hit, how's the Homestead, or what is the Homestead Act?
The way for them to expand into the Western Territory.
Okay, so the U.S. is able to expand into the Western Territories. We'll get back to if that's a good thing or not, but how do they do this? What does the Homestead Act say?
They gave 160 acres.
Okay.
Claim.
You can claim 160 acres if you live on it and work it for 5 years, right? So, I know, shocking. We will go ahead and start off with this. All right, so the Homestead Act passes in 1862. That's well before our class, right? Why are we reaching back to 1862? Any thoughts?
We live where it affected.
Okay, so it affects way later, right? Now, it's passed in 1862. Do you think a whole lot of people moved out to Kansas in 1862? Okay, people are shaking their heads no. Any thoughts on why that might be? What's going on in 1862? Civil War, people are shooting at each other. If people are shooting at each other, is this the best time to pack up your wife and your family and be like, hey, let's cruise through the battlefields and see if we can make it to a new home? No, I probably would not do that, right? So why are we discussing this later? Because people start using it after the Civil War is over, right? Once the threat is gone down, then you're like, hey, there's free land out there. So who is this land available to?
People who are U.S. citizens or trying to become U.S. citizens.
Okay, so it's interesting. You started out U.S. citizens, and that is absolutely correct. And then you said people who want to be U.S. citizens, right? So yes, I mean, the answer is loads of people can get this property. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen. You could come in from England, you could come in from China, you could come in from anywhere you wanted to, and you could get this land. So there is one specific group of people that are excluded. Now, it says at least 21, so if you're not 21, or if you are under 21 but you have a family you're supporting, then you can take this land, right? But who cannot specifically take the land?
Former Confederates.
Former Confederates. They are specifically banned from taking this land. Why do you think that is?
Because they just fought against
Yeah.
the nation.
It was written during the Civil War, so they're planning that after the Civil War is done, then yes, these people will be back as part of the U.S., but you know what? If you took up arms against the U.S., you don't deserve to have this property. So somebody from another country who has never been here has a chance at this property. You do not. So how do you get this land? What does it take?
You got to travel to it.
Okay, I have to get to the land. I have to take control of the land. I have to build a house on it, and I'm supposed to start farming it, right? So the other piece, see all the red? All of that area is area that you could homestead. And so anybody, okay, let me rephrase that. all of those states have property that you could homestead. Not all of the property in the state was homesteadable. All right, so you move out there. Are there any concerns with doing this? Are there any difficulties in moving out, taking over 160 acres, building a house, and starting a farm?
There is.
Yeah, there are some problems. Any thoughts on what some of these problems might be?
People who've already been there, Native Americans. You have the wild, wild west that's going on in the situation. You have people mining for gold, and it was definitely a time where people could kill you if you try to come in and take what they think is theirs.
All right, so yeah, I move in and I say, hey, this is my area, I'm moving in, and and you're like, I live here. Yeah, but the government told me I could move in. You're good with that, right?
No,
No. Why not?
because I've probably been living here already.
Yeah, because you're like, well, I don't care what the government told you, I'm living here. So the Native American tribes that are living in the West, are they all like, hey, this is all hunky-dory, why don't you move in, we'll be good neighbors, right? No. In fact, what happens when the Cherokee move into Oklahoma? Anybody know? The Osage are living here. And the Cherokee move in, and the Osage are like, what are you doing here? And the Cherokee go, hey, the federal government gave us this property. And the Osage go, this is not their property to give. So they actually have a big battle, and the Cherokee win, and that's why you see the Cherokee here today, right? Same thing happens on a person-by-person basis. As you move in, there are people who are like, we don't want you here. They may be Native American tribes. They may be also ranchers, people who are driving their cattle through, and you're building a fence so they can't drive their cattle through. They're like, hey, we don't want you here. There's some other problems as well. So when you move in, has anybody ever seen Kansas? Yeah. And presumably you guys have seen Oklahoma. Is it amazing, perfect, fertile ground for farming? No. And has anybody ever taken like pasture land and started to make it into farm?
I have family that does that.
All right, what happens?
It's kind of difficult to change the way that the earth is in those
Yeah.
situations. You also have to think about the cattle. Are the cows going to eat the grass that's growing there? Stuff like that.
Yeah, so if you take pasture land and you turn it into a farm, all the grass that has been growing there still wants to grow there, right? So you have to kill that grass, but not kill the soil, and try to make the soil fertile enough that you can grow whatever plant you're trying to grow. Now, when people start moving in here is a really rough time. So they have some of the worst droughts they have seen in decades. They also have some of the worst blizzards in the winters. So you get in there, you build your house. Now for eastern Kansas, for the most part, you can find enough trees. Anybody been to western Kansas?
Desolate.
Yeah. How many trees are out in western Kansas? Like 16 for all of western Kansas,
You'll
right?
see like more windmills now than you'll see trees.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of trees. How do you build a house?
With trees.
You gotta try.
Normally with trees. But if there's no trees, you got to build a house to keep this land, right? So what do you need to do? Anybody ever seen a sod house? What is a sod house?
Dirt house.
Yeah, you take chunks of dirt and you build bricks with them basically, and you build a house from dirt. So it's a lovely little place to live. Now, can you make it real big? No, it's not gonna work that way. So it's usually small. Your windows are not really great, right? Did they have windows like panes of glass at that point? Not in the West. Not that we're not super expensive. So it's dark. It's cold. It's cold in the winter. It's hot in the summer, right? One of my family members, they said that he could smell a snake in his house. Don't know if that's correct or not, but what does that tell you about when you go inside your house? So if he could smell a snake and that's important, what does that tell you about what's in these houses? Anything that can get in there is going to get in there, right? So you could have animals come in, you could have snakes, you could have all sorts of stuff that comes in your house while you're out working or while you're sleeping. So once you get the house built, now what do you have to do?
Start farming land.
Start farming the land. So all you got to do, buy yourself a nice little tractor and a combine, a couple of implements, and you're cruising, right? All right, how many tractors are there at this time? None. So you're out there with Bessie and Susie, your mules, and your plow, and you're pulling the plow along. I will tell you another sad story. One of my relatives, when he went out there, they didn't have the money for a plow and for the mules, right? So who do you think he hooked up to the front of the plow? His wife. She pulled the front of the plow, he pushed the back of the plow, and that's how they tried to start the farm. Is this fun stuff? No. Now, realistically, is he going to do 160 acres with his wife and he pushing the plow through? No. So he's just getting started, trying to make enough money to be able to buy a horse or a mule or something to help pull the plow, right? So he's pressing on. That summer, there's a drought. What happens to your crop? Yeah, it doesn't get enough water. If your crop doesn't get water, then what happens? It dies. So all the money you put into it, gone, right? That winter, they're like, okay, life sucked this year. We're going to do better. It is a horrendous blizzard, right? How's that work for you?
Ground's frozen. Doesn't really work out.
Okay, the ground's frozen, you're frozen, your house is frozen, your wife and kids are frozen, or your husbands and kids are frozen. It's not fun. The next year, they get in there and they're like, all right, we're going to do this, and they start plowing. This year, they have locusts. Locusts come in and eat everything. So a lot of the families that came out here moved back east or moved back wherever they came from, because they're like, yeah, you gave us land, but I can't do anything with it. If I can't live, it really doesn't matter if I have 160 acres. So I did forget to throw one thing in here. When I talk about the people that come out, like we said, there's immigrants, there are people from the East Coast, there's people from the West Coast. There are also a different group of people called exodusters. So, anybody ever, what does the word exoduster remind you of?
Exodus.
Exodus. All right, what is Exodus?
It's a book in the Bible.
It's a book.
Usually Egypt.
Okay, it's a book in the Bible, and the concept of this book is talking about a group of people who were slaves, who were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, right? So, who do you think the exodusters are? They're former slaves. And life absolutely stinks in the South, right? For a former slave. What are their options? There are very few. Go back and work for the people that had held you in slavery before, right? So when they see the Homestead Act and they hear about the Homestead Act, this is their opportunity. And so they're like, yes, we have the opportunity to move to the land of milk and honey. We have the opportunity to move to the promised land that has this wonderful, wonderful stuff. And they get to Kansas, and it's Kansas. It's not the promised land. So a lot of them struggle. Do they want to go back to the South? No, there's nothing for them in the South. So if you try to make it and you don't have land that's working for you, what is your next option in the West? Any thoughts?
Head back.
You could head back, you could go north, or you could join the Army. What does the Army provide you at this point? It's a guaranteed salary, guaranteed place to live, and you can stay in it as long as you're doing your job well, right? Is this better than going back to the South, where you don't know if you're going to have a job, you don't know if you're going to have a place to live? So a lot of these guys become buffalo soldiers, right? Anybody, what are the buffalo soldiers there to accomplish? Who is already in the West that needs to be dealt with by the federal government, or that the federal government believes they need to deal with? Okay, your Native American tribes, right? So a lot of these former slaves come out. If it doesn't work for them to work the property, then they join the Army and they help fight with the Native Americans. Now, whether that's a good deal, bad deal, definitely, is a perspective thing. But a lot of these guys have to make a life for themselves, so they go ahead and join the Army. All right. As people move out west, we find all these natural resources. There's a lot of land, there's forests, there are rivers, there's minerals. So what can you do with those things? How does that impact your economy? Okay, you can sell them, right? So I can go cut down trees and sell them. I can use the land to build farm and sell the crop. I can sell the minerals. And so as the population moves west, there are a lot of people and they start making more money. In addition, you have the second industrial revolution. Now, the first industrial revolution is when people start saying, hey, instead of Cindy making her own thread out of cotton and then turning that thread into cloth and then turning that cloth into their own clothes, now someone else can make the thread and then a different group of people can make the cloth out of that, right? Is that cheaper? Yes. Yes, it's much cheaper because you're having one group of people do a lot versus individuals doing just a little bit. So you have this big industrial revolution. The second one involves electricity, telephones, big factories, right? So we will talk about how this is very much like a revolution that occurred right before you guys got to be here. All right. Prior to the Civil War, in fact, through the Civil War, there's about 35,000 miles of railroad. By the end of 1900, there's 200,000 miles of railroad. Why does anybody care? I mean, because it keeps you from getting place to place, right? In Claremore, that's true. What do the railroads do for you at this point?
Better infrastructure.
Say it again.
Better infrastructure.
Yeah, you can have a better infrastructure. You can get things from one place to another cheaper than throwing it on a wagon with some horses and it takes you months. Now it takes you days, right? Is that important? Does that reduce costs for you? Absolutely. So you can get better goods cheaper than you could before. It also allows you to start building little towns in between on the railroad track. Why do you think, Claremore was placed here, and the founders of the town pushed really hard to make sure that all these railroad tracks went through Claremore so that you could get everything you wanted, and these trains would stop and they would provide goods and the town would grow. So once you have this, then you start building all of these little towns. It expands your markets, it decreases your costs, it grows cities. Because where the train stops, you can go ahead and start, growing the people. You can build factories. The other piece of building factories is electricity. Before electricity, where could you put a factory? Near water. Near a river, near flowing water. That is the only place you could put it, right? Once you have electricity, where can you put these factories?
Virtually anywhere.
Yes. So this expands where you can build cities, where you can, you can buy property much, much cheaper in western Kansas than you can along a river in Chicago, right? So now companies can go ahead and build company towns, and they build a factory, they build the entire town around the factory. You have a growing workforce because all these people that came in to build farms and it's not working out for them, now they want to come back and they need a place to live and a place to work. So they have that. What about shared knowledge? If you have, everybody in here at least has access to a computer, right? What does that computer do for you?
Connect you virtually with anything that you think of.
Yeah, it connects you with really smart people. It does connect you with really dumb people too. But if you start checking your sources, there are really smart people out there, and you can read what they say and you can grow from what they say, right? What's the purpose of going to college?
To get a degree.
Okay, to get a job. You want a degree, to get a job. From our perspective, the purpose is that you learn something, that we will put you in touch with, things that smart people have said and show you, hey, here's what they say works, here's how they proved it works, and so you don't have to go back and try everything all over again, right? So once you have this going, these guys are some of the key players. Now, some people will call them entrepreneurs. Some people call them robber barons. Are they good guys or are they bad guys?
Be greedy.
Okay.
Depends on how you look at it.
See, you're just coming up with all the answers today. Yeah, it really depends on what perspective you're looking from. So I will come back to this slide, but I want you to think about these guys, and then I want you to think about those guys. Are these good guys? Are they bad guys?
Depends on how you look at it. Yeah.
Depends on how you look at it. What do they have in common?
They made something that is that you use on a daily basis.
Yes, they made things or took control of things that we use on a daily basis, right? These guys are doing the information revolution. When computers came out, when I was in high school, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this because you guys will all make fun of me, the high school bought a computer. And I was super cool because they had, I believe, 6 monitors for this computer. The computer was in this other room, and you could see through the window that there was a computer back there. No one got to touch that computer except for this one old man. He was the only one that could touch the actual computer. The rest of us, we could go to the monitors and we could type stuff in and the computer would do stuff, right? For my senior project, I know you guys are going to be super impressed by this. I built a boat on the screen that actually sailed from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. I know, you guys are like, wow, that's incredible. My 3-year-old brother couldn't do that, right? I know, it's much easier now. But we had to type in all of the computer code to make very, very simple things happen that you guys are like, that's stupid, right? My baby sister, my baby brother could pull that off today. But these guys, so Larry Page, what does Larry Page do? You guys don't know.
He made Google.
Okay, he creates Google. Does anybody in this room ever use Google?
Yeah.
All right. Why is Google important to us?
Because you can find a lot of answers and you can, like, it's a shortcut to, like, go somewhere. Like, you can find anything
Yeah.
in here.
So it's a search engine that allows us to find the things that we want easily. So we're not like, I wonder what this website is. Oh, nope. Wonder what this website is. No, that's not what it is. Now, because you have Google, you can be like, hey, I want to look up purple orangutans, that are school mascots. And boom, you find everything out there that you're supposed to find. So this is a really good thing for you, right? How is this negative at all? Anybody know, how do you get a website to the top of Google?
Depends on how much you pay.
You pay. So they take money from other people to promote their websites. So when you're looking for the purple orangutan as a school mascot, the schools that pay are the ones that are going to pop up top. The ones that don't pay are going to show up later. So is he really doing this just to be helpful? No. The other thing, why is Google the one that we all go to?
It's the most well known.
It's the most well known because when he was establishing Google, he started shutting, basically buying out people or shutting them down. All right, Dell Computers, Michael Dell. We'll go ahead and tie Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak with Michael Dell. What do they do that is worthwhile?
Create new technologies.
Okay, they create the computer that I own, right? Prior to this, when I was telling you about my high school computer, how many people in here could purchase a computer that a school purchases one, and it's like, I don't know, I think it was 9 foot by 4 foot by probably 5 foot tall? Could you guys throw that in your apartments? When you're moving from dorm room to dorm room, you pick up your computer and you carry it around with you, right? So what do these guys do?
They make it portable.
They make it portable, they make it small, they make it cheaper. So they're doing a wonderful service for us, right? There is a wonderful service done. Why are these guys the ones that you know about?
Because they're the ones that probably stole everybody else's ideas and claimed it.
So yeah, they basically drive everyone else out of the market, and they are the ones that get to use it. All right, Microsoft. How many separate programs are there out there that you can use to do writing papers or doing basic math and statistical analysis, data analytics? There's a few out there, right? Why do we know Microsoft? Anybody? So first off, I'll ask, everybody realizes as a student at RSU, you get free Microsoft, right? Why? Is it because Bill Gates is like, I love college students. You guys are such wonderful people. I just want to give you stuff.
No, it makes you, because you will need it in the future, so you have to pay for it later.
There you go. So once I have 4 years of documents that are all in Microsoft, and by the way, they very, very wisely, I guess, decided to ensure that their stuff would not transfer to other systems, right? So you either lose everything you've created over the last 4 years for free, or you use Microsoft and you buy the new systems.
But you have to buy it on that specific email.
Yes, you have to buy it, from them and make sure that it's always an upgrade. Otherwise, your data, you don't get to keep it.
But didn't it come with every computer?
Well, that's the other thing that is interesting, because once Dell starts, then Microsoft talks to Dell and goes, you know what? We will sell you our stuff and we will put it on your computers. Now, that helps both of them, right? So Dell can say, hey, I will sell you a computer. It already has a system to do what you want on it, right? And conversely, Microsoft is like, hey, every Dell that's sold, somebody's using Microsoft. So it's a way to push everyone else out of business. So they are providing some really good stuff for us, but they are also taking your money, making billions of dollars, and driving their competitors out of business. Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Anybody in here ever use Amazon? Yeah. It really used to scare me because we have an apartment in the back of the house, and we had some students that were living in the apartment, and I would come home every day and there was Amazon packages. I'm like, is this for my wife and I'm paying lots of money, or is it for the students in the back and it's okay? But I swear every day somebody was buying something from Amazon, right? Why do people buy from Amazon?
It's convenient when it comes to us.
Okay.
Pay for the membership.
Yeah, it's convenient, it's quick. It is usually cheaper because you don't have a storefront that you're having to pay rent. Your employees are, you don't have to have 100 employees just for Claremore. You can have 100 employees for the entire U.S., selling the same amount of stuff. So it makes it cheaper. So Jeff Bezos is an amazing, wonderful man, right? He is just there to help us. Correct?
All of them make a profit off of everything that they do.
Okay. What he did is make sure that he could make a profit and still sell more than anybody else. So who is he driving out of business?
The big corporations that could do the same,
Yeah.
something similar.
JCPenney, Sears. I remember at one point everybody was angry at Walmart because Walmart was driving out the mom and pop stores. How many mom and pop stores are there anymore? Very few, because Walmart is cheaper and Amazon is certainly cheaper, right? Because if you're a mom and pop store, you can only afford to have certain items, and once somebody buys that, you have to buy a replacement and you have to fund those costs. So Jeff Bezos is making billions of dollars by selling you garbage that you may need or want, right? And finally, Mark Zuckerberg. Now, Mark Zuckerberg is completely here just because he cares about you, right? He wants you to be able to talk to your friends. How does he make money with Facebook?
Selling information to companies.
Okay. He sells your information to companies. He also sells ads so that like every fourth thing you see one of your friends talking and all the other stuff is people you're like, I didn't want to see this. I didn't need to see this. But he's making loads of money off of it, right? So again, we go back. Are these guys good guys or bad guys? Depends on your perspective. They are providing a service. They are providing something that all of us use that is a positive service. However, some of them took some pretty awful decisions that harmed a lot of people to get there. So when we look at these guys, very similar, right? Alexander Graham Bell. What does Alexander Graham Bell do for us?
He invents the telephone.
Comes up with a telephone. Does anybody care? Has anybody called your parents in the last week? I should say it differently. Has anybody's parents called you and harassed you this week? Hey, are you doing okay? Okay. Some of you. All right. I know my mom was like, I will call you once a week and make sure you're alive. Okay. So, are telephones a good thing? Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. I can call a family member over in Germany and we can have a conversation, right? So, I can keep in touch with people I would not be able to keep in touch with otherwise. All right, Thomas Edison, the light bulb. Anybody care about the light bulb? Yeah. At night, when you have been reading all day because you're just trying to enhance your knowledge, you're like, I still have to read 3 more pages for history, but it's going dark outside. What would you do before the light bulb?
Light candle.
Hopefully the candle will work, yeah. And if it doesn't, then you get up the next morning and try to read then. What do we do now? Yeah, you flick the light on. I know that's probably what you guys use the light bulbs for most. It's, not for putting on makeup or like going to parties or anything. But light bulbs pretty important to us. The electric motor, batteries. George Westinghouse comes up with the rotary steam engine, railroad brakes. So kind of fascinating. The railroad brake actually works the opposite of your car brake, right? So when you are in your car and you want to stop, what do? You hit the brake and the brakes grab onto your tire and they slow you down. Is that a good way to stop trains? No, why?
Trains don't have tires.
Okay. So they do have wheels, but the other thing that's interesting is you have this long, long train, and they were doing it through, wow, my brain just died. You've got liquid that basically presses the hose, and if you do it like gas, then it works fine because you stop all these cars. But what happens if there's a leak? Hydraulics. What happens if there's a leak in your hydraulics?
Won't stop.
It's not going to stop. So Bessie the cow walks across the tracks and she's like, hey, there's a big thing coming toward me. I should stop and see what this big thing is, right? So she stops on the tracks and this train tries to hit their brakes and they stomp, but the hydraulic fluid is leaked out. What's going to happen?
A lot of screeching and the cow getting hit.
Yeah, the cow's going to go flying. Everything's going to be ugly. So Westinghouse said, you know what? Let's do it just the opposite. You have to keep the pressure on the hydraulic fluid to keep the train running. As soon as the pressure stops, the train cars stop. Is that going to be more safe? Presumably, right? Because all you have to do is make sure that the pressure is off, and all of the train cars are going to be stopping. All right, Rockefeller does oil processes, Carnegie does steel, and then JP Morgan just finances everybody. So again, when you hear the robber barons, when you hear the Industrial Revolution, just think of those guys. So what does the Industrial Revolution do for us? One of the things it accomplishes is it creates a middle class. Prior to this, you had rich people and you had poor people. How do you get from being a poor person to being a rich person? What?
I said screw over people.
Okay, if you kill all the rich people and take their stuff, I guess you could do that. Other than that, how do you become a rich person?
You gotta invent something.
You're born into it.
Yeah, I mean, you're born into it because that's pretty much the only way you can do it. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, they don't let you have access to anything to get above. So once you have the Industrial Revolution and you create these factories and you create other things, you have to have supervisors, right? Do you need to pay your supervisors more than you pay somebody just doing the work? Realistically, yeah. What about, do you need people who are accountants who can actually tell you how much money do we need to spend for these workers? How much money do we need to spend for supplies? How much money do we need to spend to buy the factory machinery? So all of a sudden, you see some of these people who have educations taking some of these middle class positions. Now, at first, the only people who have education are rich people. But do the rich people want to take these middling jobs? They want to stay rich. So they start providing opportunities for other people coming in to take some of these middle white collar positions. And this is where people started saying, hey, you need to have an education. You need to get a larger education, further education, so that you can start moving into this middle class, right? And so for the most part, I would say 90% of Americans are probably in that, probably not 90%, but a large majority of Americans are in this middle class, where life's pretty decent. You have to work every day, but you're not looking for food, right? You're not desperately trying to figure out, how am I going to eat today? The other thing that's kind of interesting is you have a growing number of women working outside of the home. Now, probably should not have tied this with middle class, because most of these women are what class? Most of the women who start working outside of the home at this point. Poor. Why are they working outside the home?
Because they have no other income.
Because, yeah, either they are a single person and they need the income, or they have a family, but their husband is hurt or for some reason isn't able to work, so now women start joining the workforce. So a lot of times it is poorer women who are joining the workforce, but you see a movement of women outside of the home who are saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to work on the farm right now. I don't want to, I have better opportunities moving into the city and getting a job in a factory. All right. Are there any problems with industrialization? You're on it, man. All right. So, disparities in wealth. If I am working for the factory, my living wage goes up about 50%, right? If I'm abject poor, what does a 50% raise mean for me?
A lot of money.
Okay, I now have a place to live. I can afford to eat, right? So life is better. Not necessarily good, but much better than it was. But if I'm a factory owner and I had the money to buy a factory and my income raises 50%, what does that mean for me? I don't know what to do with all my money, right? Why are the factory owners not giving more money to the people working for them?
Less money to pocket.
Okay, same reason that Google and Facebook and all those guys don't just make things as cheap as they can get, right? I actually have a friend that retired and went to work for Disney, and his job, he's making over $100,000 a year, to figure out how high they can raise the price of their toys before people stop buying them. That is his only job. How much will people pay for this toy before people stop buying them in large numbers? So that they can squeeze the last penny out of you, right? So it is just the way people do things. The other thing is, anybody know who OSHA is?
So workers' protection agency.
Yeah, the Occupational Safety and Health Association. So if this light goes out and I decide I'm going to climb up on the table and fix it, you guys have any problems with that?
I mean, don't fall.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're on TV, so somebody would be yelling at me going, stop, you can't do that. Why?
It's an OSHA violation.
It violates OSHA. Has anybody ever seen a ladder lately? On the next to the last step of the ladder, what does it say?
Don't stand at the top.
Yeah, it always says, this is not a step. I'm like, it is a step. Now, you can tell me don't use it, just don't tell me it's not a step. It's truly a step. But, yes, why are they telling you not to step on the top steps?
Because the higher you are, the less your balance is, and
Okay.
the further you fall.
Yeah. So it's dangerous. Don't do that, right? Now we've gotten to the place where when you buy a coffee, there's a little thing at the bottom that says, this is hot. Don't spill it on yourself. So at this point, they don't have OSHA. So they have all this machinery, right? And it's moving at high speeds. And it is very, very big machines. Do you think there's any danger in this? Yeah. So I am working on the machines. There's probably some dirt there, right? And sometimes the dirt might get caught in the machinery. What do you need to do?
Reach in there and get it out.
Yeah, you need to reach in there and get it out. Now, I could turn the machine off, right? And then get it off. But what happens to the production line if I do that? It stops. And they don't want me to do that. So they're like, no, keep moving. So what do I need to do? I reach in there and I pull the thing out, but as I pull it out, it catches, my long sleeve shirt. And what happens? Yeah, all of a sudden my arm gets ripped off and, things go ugly for a while, right? But that's okay because I have really good insurance and I get everything. No, I don't have insurance, right? So what happens to my arm?
You lost it.
I lost my arm. And then when I'm healed up and I can go back in, I go back into my employer and I'm like, hey, I saved you lots of money by not stopping the process, right? And they go, thank you. And you say, I want my job back. And what do they say?
No.
Yeah, we don't have jobs for one-armed people. Sorry. So what am I going to do the next time something like that happens? Once I've seen somebody lose their arm, what do I do?
I'm not losing my arm.
Yeah. I go, hey, that thing stopped. Why don't you go reach in and pull that out, right? Because I'm not losing my arm. I'm not losing my job. If you're too stupid, then, I'll let you do it. And so you have a lot of really dangerous positions. Now, the bad part is, with these dangerous positions, you're working 10-hour days, 6 days a week, right? Anybody get tired in school? What do you think you get tired working 10-hour days, 6 days a week? Think that's going to be a lot? And what we have learned, I actually did some studies in this, management techniques. After you work, if I remember correctly, after you work about 5.5 hours, your ability to think starts to go down. When you have a monotonous job, after about 5.5 hours, you're like, okay, it's not that you get stupid, it's just you're tired and you're not thinking as quickly and you're not making as good of decisions. So if you're working a 10-hour day and you've been working for 5 days, this is your 6th day, do you think there's any chance that you might make some poor decisions? Yeah. So you have this, and then by 1800, 1 in every 6 children is working in a factory. Now, I will try to be nice when I say this. Do children make good decisions all the time? No. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, we had our bikes, and we decided to get some 2x4s and a little flat piece of wood, and we started building a ramp. A really cool ramp. So everybody jumps over it, and they were like, well, this isn't high enough. So we finally built a ramp like 4 foot high, but then the wood is like this, right? So one of my friends, he takes his bike, he hits the ramp, and the bike starts going almost straight up. He gets scared, and he hits the brakes, which means that the brakes act on the back of the tire, stop, and at that point, the bike flips over. He slams his head on the ground, starts bleeding everywhere, and all of us, being the brilliant young people we are, we're like, okay, before we tell our parents, let's hide every part of this ramp so that we don't get in trouble, right? Because we're kids, that's what you do. So are kids going to make smart decisions? No. So when you have this thing that isn't working well, what do? You go to some 10-year-old and you're like, hey, pull that out of there. Because realistically, they're a 10-year-old. You know what? If they lose their arm, they weren't making that much money anyway. Right? What's the other problem with child labor?
They're in the factories all day. They can't get the education that they need.
All right. If you're in the factory 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, how much education are you getting?
None.
Yeah, none. What are your chances to be part of the middle class?
Very little.
Very low. Yeah. So I am sticking you in a position where I ensure that your life is going to be difficult for the rest of your life, right? Why would parents put their children into these positions?
They need the money.
Because I got to have the money. We got to eat. The more kids there are, the more food that we need. So I'm like, hey, you know what? You're 10 years old. Get your little tail in here, and you're going to work, and you're going to make some money so everybody in this family can eat, right? All right. So if I'm a worker and I'm not happy with my conditions, what do I need to do? Okay, I can have a union, right? And the union is going to fight with the management to say, all right, you're not treating us correctly. Joe lost his arm and you told him, suck it up, you don't have a job. We're going to say, if people get hurt in your place, then you have to help them at a later point. Intriguingly, the first unions are skilled labor. So what does skilled labor mean? Today, plumbers, electricians, right? Why are those skilled labor?
Because they require some sort of practice or specialization.
All right. You have to have a skill set. I can't just walk in and be like, hey, I'll take care of your electricity for Roger State, right? Because otherwise buildings would be burning down, people would be electrocuted. So there's a skill set that you have to have in order to get into these. One of the first parties is the Workmen's Party of California. Do you know what their big demand is? Yeah, it's written there. So
Stop Chinese immigration.
stop Chinese immigration. Is it because they just hate Chinese people?
Yeah, they're coming in to take their jobs.
All right, Chinese people can come over and they will work for less money, right? So why do you have a problem with somebody working for less money?
Because they're taking the jobs that you would be working.
Okay, because if they work for less money, then when you go to your boss and say, hey, I need a raise, they're going to be like, no, I'll just hire more of the people who are taking less money. By the way, you're fired. Now you don't have a job, right? And in order to get your job back, what do you have to do?
Work for less money.
You have to work for less money. And so people are like, we don't want Chinese immigration because we want higher wages. And the only way to ensure higher wages is to not bring people in who are going to work for less. All right. Then you have the National Labor Union. What is one of the things they want?
8-hour workday.
8-hour workday. Why is this important?
So you can have some rest.
Yeah, because I want to be able to go do some things I want to do, right? I don't want to wake up in the morning, go to work, finish working, and go to bed. I want to go out and talk to my friends. I want to do some things. The repeal of contract labor goes back to the same thing as the Chinese immigration. A lot of the companies would say, look, I will send out stuff into Europe, I'll send it into Asia, and I will say, look, we will pay for you to come to the US. We will completely pay for your trip. But once you get here, you're required to work for us until you pay off the cost of you coming. Now, in one sense, that's good if you are wanting to immigrate to the US, right? Because in Europe, the jobs are a lot harder to get, and there's too many people. So you're like, hey, if I go to the US, I get paid more, I get better food, I get better things. So you come over to the US. But what does that do to the labor market in the US? You're working for less money, so it costs other workers, right? So they're like, we don't want that. The Knights of Labor comes up with everybody who earns wages can be part of us with some exceptions. So if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you are somebody who's highfalutin, then no, you can't be part of us. Again, 8-hour workday. They want to get rid of convict labor. Convict labor, why do you not like it?
We do it for free.
Because they will do it for like a couple bucks or for free. So again, it depresses the income you can make. Mechanics lien laws. Anybody know what a mechanics lien law is? All right. So I have a Lamborghini, right? Yeah, whatever. But for this example, I have a Lamborghini. I drive in and, all right. So I'm going to go to your garage and I want you to change the oil in my Lamborghini. Are you going to do a good job? Yeah, because, why not? Once you've done a great job of changing my oil and fixing everything, I come in, I go, you're done? And you say, yes. And I grab my keys and I drive off with my Lamborghini and you go, wait a minute, you didn't pay me. Do I care? No. It's your problem. Do you have the money to force me into court? No. But mechanics lien laws say you own my car if I don't pay you for the oil change. Now, presuming oil change is about 50 bucks, do I want to lose my Lamborghini over 50 bucks? No. So I'm going to pay you, right? Okay. couple of you are like, yes. Some of you are like, whatever. You know, I got enough money, I can buy a new Lamborghini. No big deal. All right. Paper money. Why would people want paper money?
Print more of it.
Say it again.
Print more of it.
You can print more of it. So it actually devalues over time, right? So it's easier to get paper money. It's easier to spend paper money than it is gold coins or silver coins, which is what they had. And then equal pay for equal work. Anybody in here care about that? What if I just decide randomly to give some people A's, some people C's, and some people F's? Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, I'm getting some nods. Why?
It's not equal.
Okay, because you want fair, right? If you do the work, you want the pay, you want the response for the work. All right? So once they get the unions, how do the unions work? If there is a disagreement between the union and the owner, you have strikes. So Haymarket strike, they say you're not paying us enough because they dropped wages and they start firing people. They say this isn't right. They quit working and the owners bring in other people who will work for the new pay. So the union workers push to keep the other people from getting in. Big fight happens. Police are called and some people are killed. The next day, they have a memorial kind of thing for the union workers that were killed. Police come in to break them up, and somebody throws a bomb, kills 7 of the policemen, and over 100 of the policemen are wounded, right? Now you have some ugliness because people are like, hey, those unionist guys, we thought they were good, decent people, but now we're concerned. So you start to split the U.S. between those people who like unions and the people who think unions are hurting people. The Homestead Steel Strike is very similar. You start to see groups of people who are like, not only do we want unions, but we want to get rid of the factory owners. And so when there's a strike, they go ahead and bring in the Pinkertons. The Pinkertons and the union workers actually get into a pitched battle, shooting at each other. One of the guys who is an anarchist, who doesn't believe in government, decides that he should kill the president of the factory. So again, it further differentiates. The Pullman strike. Pullman is a kind of train car, and so this one, the guys decide to do something a little different. They take the train cars, and anybody know, is it illegal to stop the mail? Yes, absolutely. If I steal mail, it's a federal offense, right? So what they did is the railroad car workers stopped all the cars from moving. When that happened, the factory owners, the Pullman people, started putting mail cars with the trains. Why is that important?
You said it's a federal offense. If they take over those trains,
Yep.
they can get serious time for it.
So now when the union guys tried to stop the train, it was a violation of federal law and they could be arrested. All right, kind of interesting. You start moving into socialism and you start seeing people who are like, you know what? Rich people are bad and evil and they need to be overthrown. What we need to do is make sure that there's poor people in charge. So Eugene Debs comes in and he becomes a presidential candidate. From 1900 until 1912, he is on every single presidential ballot saying poor people should have more rights than rich people. Poor people, we should overthrow the rich people and all the poor people get as much money as the rich people have. Intriguing to me, Oklahoma at this time is huge socialist territory. Why do you think that might be?
A lot of the people are poor.
Because most of the people are poor. And so they're like, yeah, we want to have socialism. So now you have the industrial workers of the world. They try to start a class war, and they say, what we really want is all the poor people in the world to have one government, and we will give everyone everything they need, and that one government will overthrow every other government in the world. All right. So, Homestead Act. What does the Homestead Act do? Okay. 160 acres of land. If you will move on it, live on it for 5 years, and improve it, right? Who is not allowed to have it? Confederates. And does it have an impact? Yes, you start to fill in the central U.S. All right. How do the inventions of the Second Industrial Revolution transform life? Give me one example.
The telephone allows you to talk to people.
Okay, telephone allows you to talk to people. I heard lights.
Easier transportation.
Okay, trains, better transportation, which allows you to get cheaper goods quicker, right? Forms of middle class.
Factories begin.
Factories can spread anywhere they want to spread to, so you get more cities and a broader representation across the U.S., right? Okay,
Cities were growing.
say it again.
Cities were growing.
Okay, cities start to grow. You can, with steel, you can build bigger buildings. You can build apartment buildings, right? So all of those things, what are some of the goals of the first labor unions?
Better wages, hours, and safer working space.
Okay, so you want 8-hour days. You want better working conditions. You want to exclude other people who are going to drop your pay, right? All right. For next class period, we will be chatting about the South and the West. Some of this is going to impact Oklahoma significantly. All right, does everybody have books at this point? If you don't have your book, please let me know. And I want to make sure that we somehow come up with a good answer. All right?
You can find it online for free.
Okay. You'll have to email me and tell me about that, and I will pass it out. All right. Any questions, thoughts, concerns about today's class? All right. You can go ahead and take off. So today, we talked about the Industrial Revolution, and our next class period, like I said, we're going to deal with the South and the West, and then on next Monday, we will be talking about how industrialization impacts immigration and how that immigration changes the U.S. So, all right. Thank you very much for your time, and I will see you on Wednesday.